What's up and welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Monday, August 14th. Hope everybody had a fantastic weekend. I am Frank Stanfield, joined by Scott White and Chris Towers. Today on the show, Zack Gelof continues to mash. Gavin Williams is heating up back-to-back double-digit strikeouts starts for him, other waiver wire moves, and start or sit decisions. Before we get started, help us out by liking this video and subscribing on YouTube if you haven't already. And if you're listening on the audio side, download, follow, and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. Chris, how did it feel when your Marlins had one of the best comebacks of the season against the Yankees on Sunday?
That was phenomenal stuff. I don't know if you saw my videos on Twitter, Frank. You should go check them out. I put the Marlins walk-off win to some choice musical highlights because everybody remembers the Scott Stapp Marlins song. Come on Marlins, make us free. We all know that one. They also had a Pitbull song that is not as ridiculous as the Scott Stapp one, but it's really ridiculous. And it was fun to go through the archives and find those. They're alive. Yankees, not so much.
No, it's a rough go. I mean, look, I'm kind of a salty Yankees fan, so anytime I get to kind of, I don't know, stick the knife in the Yankees and then kind of turn it, I like to do that. But anyway, no one cares about the Yankees.
Both New York teams are in last place now, right?
Oh,
Are the Nationals ahead of the Mets now?
It was close when I checked the other day.
No,
the Mets won today.
They're
they're
so the Mets are half a game, full game or half a game.
Half a game.
Nationals. Yeah.
Half a game ahead. Yep. It's a rough year out in New York. Anywho, let's talk baseball.
Holy Toledo, the element of surprise reigns supreme.
Scotty, you're up. Player of the weekend.
All right. My player of the weekend, mostly because of his contributions Sunday, is Zack Gelof. Hit 2 home runs Sunday on a 4-for-5 day. Huge performance. In the month of August now, he's batting .366 with 5 home runs, 1 stolen base, has 8 home runs and 6 stolen bases overall, and just a little more than 100 plate appearances. So he's been great. He's been great since coming up to the majors. And look, you look at his surface level numbers at AAA, they were great too. Under the hood, it's really not so great. And I've been saying this all along, and maybe Gelof will just continue to prove me wrong, but I'm trying to be disciplined here, because I feel like whenever I back off, whenever I relent to the guy with bad data who is putting up good stats, I almost always end up regretting it. So I'm trying to be careful. And let me tell you exactly what I'm talking about with Zack Gelof. So his 95th percentile exit velocity at AAA was lower than Luis Matos's, even, who of course is, for all the good numbers he put up at AAA, has had a lot of trouble hitting the ball hard. Zack Gelof's zone contact rate is about as low as at AAA, I'm saying, is about as low as I've ever seen, 74%. I don't know exactly where that ranked among all minor league hitters, but I can tell you there is not a qualifying major league batter with a zone contact rate that low. And then if you look at his numbers since entering the majors, he basically has the same issues. That zone contact rate for Zack Gelof as a major leaguer, also about 74%. So what that means is he's swinging and missing a lot at pitches he should hit in the zone. So he misses a lot of hittable balls, and relative to the league as a whole, his high quality contact isn't especially high quality. So that seems like a bad combination, because I do think history, especially recent history, has shown that you can overcome really bad swing and miss tendencies if you make highly impactful contact when you do make contact. But can you do it without that? I'm skeptical. I'm very skeptical I'm glad Zack Gelof is hot right now, but I'm afraid that's all it is. If you are looking for a positive spin on Zack Gelof, I can tell you, and this is true both in the minors and majors so far, high line drive rate, high fly ball rate, high pull rate. So he may angle the ball in such a way that he gets maximum benefit out of the contact he does make. But I'm struggling to think of a comp for that who has all of these things going on in the way Zack Gelof does.
So I pulled up Prospects Live. They have the AAA StatCast leaderboards, and I set the pitch minimum for 500. So guys who have seen 500 pitches. Gelof, he was like bottom probably 25 in zone contact rate, which is pretty bad when you're talking about 411 qualifying players. He was just ahead of Jared Walsh, I guess, who has played a significant amount at AAA. But yeah, nobody below him. 74% in zone contact rate. Christopher Morel is at 73.6. Obviously, his quality of contact is much better. Mm-hmm. Luke Voigt, old friend Luke Voigt, 70.3%. Bobby Dalbec, kind of the same thing. Gerard Encarnacion. Bobby Dalbec.
You're naming a lot of guys who washed out of the majors.
Well, and Bobby Dalbec's kind of a useful example for the downside because he has, much more raw power than Zack Gelof, and obviously never worked out as a major leaguer. Gelof in the majors, his in-zone contact rate 73.5%. It hasn't gotten worse, and there are some relevant names below him. Minimum 100 plate appearances: Joey Gatto, Chris Taylor, Matt Wallner, Jose Siri, and Joey Gallo have worse in-zone contact rates. But again, Joey Gallo has I mean, at this point, 65 grade raw power, maybe 70 grade raw power, but still very, very high end. Jose Siri is probably the closest comp because Jose Siri doesn't like crush the ball. He just hits the ball to the pull side a lot, hits the ball in the air, but his average exit velocities are relatively middling, and he's also a guy who is hitting 216. So,
And there are some built-in disadvantages for Gelof that aren't even true for somebody like Siri. Bad lineup, bad ballpark. I guess Siri's ballpark isn't great either.
Yeah.
But really, the lineup is, you can't get much worse there than what Gelof is in. Having said all that, I mean, I'm a realist. It's late in the season. If you're looking for middle infield help off the waiver wire, it's slim pickings. Why not pick up the red hot hitter who could also steal you some bases? Mm-hmm. I'm fine with that. I'm just saying, exercise caution. It's because it could. I do predict it'll slow down at some point, and I have no way of predicting exactly when that point will be.
Again, this is Zack Gelof. We're talking about a 4-hit game with 2 home runs on Sunday. The plate discipline, very scary. He had a 17% swinging strike rate entering Sunday's action as well. But I noticed the same thing, Scott. When he puts the ball in the air, he's lifting the ball. His average exit velocity is still pretty good. His hard hit rate is good. So I think he's just maximizing when he hits the ball. He's lifting it and he's pulling it. And obviously that's working out very well for Zack Gelof right now. I agree. In leagues with a middle infield spot, yes. Head-to-head points leagues, probably still too shallow, maybe as like a utility hitter or something like that. If you're just looking for one of the hottest hitters in baseball right now, it's Zack Gelof, and he's on the waiver wire. So 38% rostered. Go out and see if he is available. Chris, let's go over to you, your player of the weekend.
Is what Dane Dunning's doing the most unexpected run that a pitcher has gone on this season? I mean, we've had, this has been, I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but I feel like this has been one of the more difficult seasons to predict in terms of individual pitcher performance. Maybe the most. Like it feels like we don't really know who's good and who's bad. But
well, you get randomly a good pitcher will just draw the short straw for the day and give up big runs. Like on Sunday, it was Eduardo Rodriguez. Earlier in the weekend, Jesus Luzardo. Like it's yeah.
Dane Dunning had 12 strikeouts in 7 innings. He had 6 strikeouts in 6 innings the previous start, 11 in 7 2/3 the start before that. That means, if I'm doing my math in my head correctly, he has 29 strikeouts over his past 3 starts. To give some context as to how unlikely this stretch has been, In his 10 starts prior to this most recent 3 starts, he had 36 strikeouts. That was 2 months. And he had 7 more strikeouts than he has in his last 3 starts. I don't know if you guys have. I haven't seen a good explanation for. I guess there's the why and the how, right? Because the why is actually pretty straightforward if you look at the game log. I think he had, 15 swinging strikes on his slider today? Some bonkers number. His slider has just been ridiculous.
12 of 23 total swinging strikes.
The cutter has been getting a ton of swings and misses lately.
He hardly threw that today, though.
Mm-hmm.
It was mostly the cutter responsible for the first double-digit strikeout start 2 starts ago, and then it was mostly the slider on this one.
But yeah, his cutter swing and miss rate, his whiff rate, which is swinging strikes per swing, always confusing when we get into those distinctions. But his cutter whiff rate in the month of August is like 60%. His slider whiff rate is like 50%. The first 4 months of the season, Dane Dunning's slider whiff rate was 25%, which is pretty below. That's probably below average. I think average for a slider is about 28%. I don't know. There's no velocity jump here. There's not really a change in the shape of the pitch that I've seen. I don't really have a good.
I do want to point out one thing I noticed, because I noticed it with a few pitchers this weekend in particular. So I mentioned, well, we both mentioned, I guess, that his slider was responsible for a large percentage of his whiffs in this start. His slider was down 1.2 miles per hour. And, we've talked about that phenomenon with Chase Silseth, a couple months ago, Reed Detmers, who I know has been horrible lately. But there were a handful of pitchers like that. Their slider specifically was down a little over a mile per hour and was super effective for them. Julio Urias is an example from this weekend. Let's see. Urquidy's velocity on both his off-speed pitches was down. There are several examples. I just don't have them listed here one after another. And so I wonder if there's something to that. I wonder if the league as a whole has discovered that, because for a while it seemed like the harder slider was trending. And now, since we're seeing it repeatedly, a pitcher takes a mile per off his slider and then starts getting more whiffs with it. I just wonder if there's something to that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's really interesting about Major League Baseball right now is like slider no longer has one meaning. There's like 4 different types of sliders that different guys throw, and it's kind of a tough pitch to talk about as if it's just one pitch, because like Dane Dunning has experimented with the gyro slider. He's experimented with a more sweepy slider, which is all just to say that I don't know what's gotten into Dane Dunning. It looked like he was turning back into a pumpkin before this 3-start stretch. His ERA
I thought he was out of a job. They acquired 2 starting pitchers.
And instead, he's now turned in arguably the best stretch of his career, certainly in terms of strikeouts. So this is a lot of time to spend to get to the conclusion that I don't know. Like I have no idea. I don't think Dane Dunning's good. I don't see how you can sit him for his next start right now, which is really hard that's a really hard thing to get your mind around, because I'm trying to, it's like Scott said with Zack Gelof. We're trying to identify talent and project talent moving forward. And I don't think Dane Dunning's within the context of major league pitchers, obviously, a particularly talented pitcher. But right now, what he's doing, if it's real at all, there's no way you can sit him. But if he gives up 5 runs in his next outing, I also wouldn't be surprised at all.
Yeah, I think that's the only actionable question is he's 70% started. He's 97% rostered, obviously. So there is room for people to get him in their lineup still. So he's at home against the Milwaukee Brewers this week. They're 23rd in WOBA against right-handed pitching. That sounds like a start Dane Dunning, right?
I think so.
Yeah. I do want to also mention real quick with Dane Dunning, when he first came up for the White Sox, I forget what year it was, several years ago. He first came up for the White Sox. And he looked like a bat misser, kind of surprisingly, because he wasn't known for that in the minors. And there was kind of Dane Dunning mania there for a month or so. And then it just kind of went away. And I know the slider was largely responsible for it then. And I just wonder if maybe whatever he was doing then, he's figured out again.
But the movement profile doesn't look that different. There's no good explanation for it. Yeah.
It looks like we're going to have to be reading some Lance Brazdowski tweets on.
I was frantically searching his timeline earlier, and I haven't seen any explanation for it.
Let's talk about Gavin Williams, my player of the weekend here. Back-to-back starts with double-digit strikeouts. He was at Tampa Bay. He allowed 1 run over 5 innings with 10 strikeouts to 0 walks, 19 swinging strikes on 87 pitches. And his fastball is quickly looking like an elite pitch. 14 of his 19 swinging strikes on the 4-seam fastball in this start. And so far it has a 207 batting average against, 29% whiff rate. To put this into perspective of just good pitches, right? In terms of getting swing and miss. Dane Dunning's slider, we were just talking about, has a 30% whiff rate. Gavin Williams' fastball has a 29%. You don't normally see a fastball that high. It's even a good fastball. It's like maybe it's 20% whiff rate, 25%, 29% on a fastball is really, really good for Gavin Williams. And all of a sudden, his overall season line, a 2.80 ERA, a 1.17 whip, over a strikeout per inning. He's up to 76% rostered, could be out there in some shallower leagues, facing the Tigers this week. Scott, I think that of all the pitchers that I'm going to mention that are available in terms of waiver wire options, I think Gavin Williams should be the number one priority, given the prospect pedigree, the way he's pitching right now.
Yeah, I would say so too. And, a lot of it is just his velocity has gone up here in recent starts. And I did see something from him, a typical thing you hear from a young pitcher. He felt like he was kind of nibbling and he was convinced by the Guardians coaching staff to just air it out, that your stuff is too good, that Major League, all those cliches. But, if you see improved production and an uptick in velocity, it would kind of lend credence to the idea that Gavin Williams was pitching kind of scared, trying to be a little too fine instead of just airing it out. And if this is what airing it out looks like for him, and given his prospect pedigree, that wouldn't be surprising either. Then yeah, we could be in for a very strong finish for him.
And there's room for him. I don't know if better than 2 consecutive starts with double-digit strikeouts. That's pretty good. We're probably not going to do much better than that, but the slider and curveball whiff rates have not been great yet. And that was something that I'm trying to find it, because I remember when I was doing the research when he got called up, one of the pitches was his out of the zone whiff pitch. The curveball. He hasn't quite figured out how to get the whiffs on the curveball yet, but it was 46% in the minors. So that's one that, if he figures out how to throw that out of the zone more consistently, I think is the biggest thing for him, and get more chases. That could be a second swing and miss pitch. Because right now, the slider whiff rate 29%, that's right around Spencer Strider's fastball whiff rate, which is about, not as good as you can get, but it's like 12th in the majors. The slider and curveball are closer to average. And so there could be room for him to get even better with, the rest of the arsenal.
Again, that is Gavin Williams, 76% rostered, facing the Tigers this week. Number one priority in terms of waiver wire pitchers. Let's talk about some other names that could be in this vicinity. Again, I don't think anyone's going to challenge Gavin Williams, but let's find out. Chase Silseth turned in another solid start at the Astros this weekend. 5 shutout innings with 5 strikeouts for him. Steven Matz has pitched very well over the past month or so. He was at the Royals, 6 innings, 2 runs, 5 strikeouts. His last 5 starts, a 1.24 ERA, a 0.86 whip for Steven Matz. And JP France, another strong start for him, facing the Angels, 7 innings of 2-run ball with 5 strikeouts there. He's got a 2.74 ERA, a 1.21 whip, 77% rostered. Looks like he's facing the Mariners this week. Chris, I'll throw this one your way. How would you rank Silseth, Matz, and JP France?
I would go Silseth, France, Matz. I don't really understand what Steven Matz is doing, but I feel like we've had stretches like this from him in the past and then they go away. So I don't want to buy in too much, but Silseth especially, and France to a lesser extent, are they've got a little bit of the aura of the mystery box to them. And, Silseth in particular has been very impressive the last handful of starts. So I would give him the edge here. He's got the good strikeout rate, gets a lot of ground balls. Walks have been an issue for him at times, but I think Silseth's a pretty interesting pitcher.
Silseth, Matz, and France, really Gavin Williams too. They're all among my sleeper pitchers for this week. So if you need somebody to pick up and play, they would all be fine. For Silseth, I will point out that his best start was his previous one. And remember, he got a lot of whiffs with his splitter. Kind of out of nowhere, we pointed out the changes in his slider already. He pretty much put away the splitter in this most recent start. It may have just been a start where it was on like crazy because he only got 2 whiffs on 21% splitters in this most recent start at Houston. I also want to mention for JP France, this was his first start after his brief removal from the rotation. So they kind of just let him work out of the bullpen for one turn and then put him back in. They're doing that with Hunter Brown next time through. Hunter Brown's getting a week in the bullpen, basically, and then they plan to bring it back in the rotation. So rather than having like a true 6-man rotation, the Astros seem to be building in rest for each of their starters this way, just kind of removing them for a turn, letting them work out the bullpen if need be. I think they did it for Christian Javier, the first of all of them, right? Do I remember that right?
I think so, yeah.
So that's how they're handling their starter surplus. So, you may have been like, oh, I got to drop JP France. He's in the bullpen now. It's just obviously just a short-term thing.
It might have been like a lefties versus righties thing with the splitter for Chase Silseth. That's what I'm looking at. But like Astros have 4 lefties in their lineup today. So I'm not sure that explains it.
Okay. With Steven Matz, I'll point out, it is a revenge game this week facing the New York Mets. They are pretty bad against left-handed pitching. So I agree with Scott in terms of sleeper pitchers for this week. It's a good matchup coming up here for Steven Matz. Hunter Brown, again, Scott just mentioned, not going to make a start this week. Don't drop him. Just make sure to get him out of your lineups. Waiver wire pitchers part 2. Ranger Suarez turned in a quality start up against the Twins. 6 1/3 innings, 2 runs, 8 strikeouts with 14 swinging strikes. Jose Quintana, another quality start against the Braves. Very impressive. 6 innings, 1 run, 4 strikeouts for him. Christopher Sanchez, a quality start as well. 6 innings, 2 runs, 5 strikeouts against the Twins. I'm like, do we even mention starts against the Twins anymore? I feel like they're so bad and they strike out so much. But I mean, hey, they're good starts for Sanchez and Ranger Suarez. Brandon Williamson, I mentioned him last week. He continues to pitch well over his last 6 starts. He's a 3.15 ERA and a 105 whip. And Hyunjin Ryu, solid start this weekend. 5 innings, 2 unearned runs with 3 strikeouts there. Scott, lots of names here. 5 names. Give me your 3 favorites. Ryu, Williamson, Christopher Sanchez, Quintana, and Ranger Suarez.
I'll say Suarez, Quintana, Sanchez, and mostly because I think they're the 3 most likely to give you quality starts with any consistency. Quintana's thrown 4 straight with 6 innings, which is very encouraging to see from him because like last year, he pitched pretty well all year, but it just didn't work deep enough into games to be hugely impactful in fantasy. And I don't think he can be hugely impactful in fantasy now pitching for the Mets, but he can be a solid streamer stabilizer type.
Would you be okay dropping Reed Detmers for any of these names that we've mentioned, Scott? All of them, some of them. He's got an ERA over 10 over his last 6.
I know. That's, I brought up the taking something off the slider and like I said, he sort of led the charge with that. And it's, he's continued to do that. It's not like his velocity on the slider has ticked back up and that's why he's struggled. It just stopped working for him. And I don't know that the rise or fall was necessarily tied to that, but yeah, 10.30 ERA, 193 whip in his last 6 starts. There's no way you can trust Reed Detmers now. And I don't know what it'll take to trust him before the season is over. I don't have a lot of confidence in Williamson or Ryu, but I certainly wouldn't criticize anybody for dropping Detmers for either of them.
2 names in deeper leagues. I had some bids in on these 2 in my 15-team leagues. Javier Assad, great start at the Blue Jays on Friday. 7 innings, 1 run, 2 strikeouts for him. And Scott, correct me if I'm wrong. I didn't see or hear how to pronounce this guy's name. Is it Alan Winans?
It is.
Winans. Okay.
Winans.
So Alan Winans made a start for the Braves. Not sure that he'll remain in the Braves rotation. They have been using Yanni Chirinos. He's not very good, so maybe they'll give this kid a shot. But he dominated the Mets. 7 shutout innings, 9 strikeouts. He had 15 swinging strikes on 111 pitches. They just rode this kid. They let him go out there and do his thing.
Kid, he's like 2 years younger than you.
Yeah, but come on, he's a kid. You know,
it was the 21-3 game that he started, so
right.
He better have given them 7 innings.
Chris, any interest in deeper leagues? Javier Assad, Alan Winans.
I mean, Winans' minor league numbers aren't uninteresting, except that he's 27. There's like something, Scott, maybe you know the story, but there was something in his story that caused him to be like a relatively older prospect, right?
I actually don't know the story.
Okay.
No, I think he recently turned 28 even, so you were giving him too much credit. But yeah, I mean, so the minor league numbers are a
sub 3 ERA overall,
279, 103 whip. It's like 8K per 9, but the swinging strike rate is better than you'd expect for 8K per 9. So I would like I've seen enough of Yanni Chirinos that I'd like for them to give Winans a shot at this point. I would bet against him being an impactful fantasy player, but he only needs to be decent to have fantasy value with that offense backing him.
It's actually like ridiculous. The Braves need to stop. Like, can someone in their lineup slump? Like Michael Harris wasn't good in April, and basically that's it. Everyone has just crushed the ball all year long. It's ridiculous.
It is crazy. And more this weekend. My man Matt Olson, 3 more homers. Austin Riley hit 2 home runs this weekend. Ozzie Albies had a pair of socks and shoes, 2 homers, 2 steals. I mean, their lineup is just going insane.
Left the game today, but
yeah, hopefully
like
it's all right.
okay.
It sounds like hamstring cramping. They were kind of playing it safe. So we'll see what happens with Ozzie Albies. I just want to point out an oh my goodness gracious, I guess, sequence of the weekend from Sunday. Cedric Mullins, what he did in the 9th and 10th innings of that game was insane. He robbed a game-tying home run in the bottom of the 9th inning. The next batter actually hit a game-tying home run, so it didn't feel as impactful.
One of the bat flips of the season, by the way, by Dominic Canzone. That was
I got to check it out.
That was an incredible. Like, he crushed that ball and pimped the hell out of it, deservedly so. It was awesome.
Yeah, so the game was then tied going into the 10th inning. Cedric Mullins comes up. It's a go-ahead 2-run homer in the 10th, and just to rob a home run and then the next inning hit a go-ahead home run. It's just awesome. Superstar stuff there from Cedric Mullins. Let's take our first break. When we return, waiver wire hitters from the weekend. We'll do that right after this.
Fight for something. First play of the game to the last play of the game. 1, 2, 3.
And we've got 2 of the hottest conferences. This is big-time college ball.
They're going to come. We're going to come.
2 big boys getting ready to play.
Big, the operative word here.
And here they come.
Welcome back into Fantasy Baseball Today. A quick reminder to sign up for our Fantasy Baseball Today newsletter. It's free, and you can find it at cbssports.com/newsletters. If you're watching us live, scan that QR code, and that will take you right to the website. And if you're getting ready for fantasy football, then you should sign up for the FFT newsletter to support Chris and help you get ready for all of your fantasy football drafts. Let's talk waiver wire hitters. We already spoke about Zack Gelof, who is one of the hotter hitters in the game right now, as is Keibert Ruiz. He's doing big things here in the second half. He hit 2 more home runs this weekend. I was very skeptical of an optimistic power projection for Keibert Ruiz coming into the year. I think most projection systems had him for mid-teens in the home runs. We haven't seen any indication that he was going to do that. And here we go. He's already up to 14 home runs, and it's August 13th. So it quietly has been a very good season for Keibert Ruiz. Scott, how would you rank this group? Names we've talked about recently: Ruiz, MJ Melendez, Cal Raleigh, and Yainer Diaz.
I would rank them. I think I'm going to put Ruiz number 1 now. Certainly in points leagues. You could maybe make the case for Cal Raleigh over him in categories leagues. It's pretty close between those two in that format, I would say. And then who are the other two? Diaz and Melendez. Like,
yeah,
it's funny. I mentioned there were no qualifying batters in the majors, qualifying being a key word there. No qualifying batters in the majors with a lower zone contact rate than Zack Gelof had in the minors. You know who's lowest among qualifiers? It's MJ Melendez. Yeah, he's been pretty bad. And to add insult to injury, doesn't look like he's going to be catcher eligible next year. So I don't know. MJ Melendez, we hardly knew ye.
Might not be a top 500 fantasy player if he's not catcher eligible next year. I mean, it's been pretty bad. I don't know. Like, he still has potential. I don't want to write him off, but yeah, there's not a lot to be optimistic about there.
Yeah, Melendez has played better in the second half, but it's obviously a very small sample size compared to the larger sample that we have of his career, which has been pretty lackluster so far for MJ Melendez. Maybe they figure out something to do with Salvador Perez. I mean, there were some whispers about them trading him around the deadline, and maybe he just DHs. I know he's played first base here and there this season, and maybe that's a path to get Melendez back into catcher. But as of now, it does not look like he will have catcher eligibility for next season. Two outfielders from the weekend. Tommy Pham is heating back up. He hit a home run on Friday, then had 2 hits and a stolen base on Saturday. He is one of Scott's sleeper hitters this week. I know the D-backs play, I believe, 7 games, and they've got some of those in Coors Field. So obviously some great
best hitter matchups.
Great matchups here for Tommy Pham.
This next guy is in my sleeper hitters too.
Oh, Kerry Carpenter, 3 home runs this weekend. That was entering Sunday. I'll pull up what he did on Sunday, but he had at least 3 home runs, and he's playing really well. 282 batting average for Carpenter, 15 homers, and 855 OPS. He's playing every day now, even against left-handed pitching. He is there. He is in the lineup, and he is crushing it. Kerry Carpenter, 32% rostered. Scott, who do you have higher this week on the sleeper hitters? Tommy Pham, Kerry Carpenter.
Carpenter, actually.
Ooh.
Yeah, I think he's really good.
Chris, who would you take? I know that you're a big Kerry Carpenter fan.
Yeah, I mean, Kerry Carpenter, the thing is, like, they haven't given him a lot of opportunities against lefties. He hasn't been terrible against them, though. And we always talk about that with young left-handed hitters. And he's 25, so I guess we can still call him young. This kid.
First full season.
He's got a 748 OPS against lefties. It's 46 plate appearances, but only 8 strikeouts. It's like, it's nothing alarming yet. And I think that's the biggest thing is, like, I would like to see him prove he can't hit lefties. And hopefully they'll give him that chance moving forward, because if he can just be a mid 700s OPS bat against lefties, he might be an 850 OPS bat overall, because he really hits righties well.
Mm-hmm. And plus, you're the Detroit Tigers, right?
Right, you got to give him a chance. That's what it never made sense that they weren't playing him every day. Like, they weren't playing for anything in June.
It's like, who are you platooning him for? Eric Haas or Andy Ibanez? Come on, man. Let's just give Kerry Carpenter an everyday role, which right now it looks like he does have. So shout out to them. Very interesting time right now for Kerry Carpenter and Tommy Pham. Great matchups this week. 2 names in deeper leagues. John Singleton. Again, the ghost of Nando DeFino. His ears must be ringing. I know he loves John Singleton.
John Singleton.
3 for 4 with a
bad Nando impression. Sorry.
3 for 4 with a double dong on Friday.
I said, yeah.
John Singleton. 3 for 4 with a double dong. 2 homers on Friday, both off of a lefty. I thought that was pretty interesting. Obviously, once upon a time, had some prospect pedigree, big power for John Singleton. He's, spent most of his career in the minor league so far. JP Martinez is a name I brought up on, I believe it was Thursday or Friday's podcast. He's a 27-year-old, called up recently by the Rangers, started all 3 games for them this weekend, had back-to-back multi-hit games on Saturday and Sunday. Chris, any interest in deeper leagues? Anything here? John Singleton, JP Martinez.
I mean, look, Singleton's numbers at AAA were very, very good, but I tend to think there's probably nothing here. I think it was the longest anyone had gone between 2 homer games in Major League history, if I saw that stat correctly. It was a very long time, if it wasn't the longest, either way. So no, I don't think there's anything there. Martinez, there's speed, and a little bit of pop, so maybe, but I would prefer Martinez over Singleton, but not super enthusiastic about either.
I don't want to spend 10 minutes talking down Zack Gelof and then talk up John Singleton. But I am kind of interested in John Singleton because it was weird how quickly the Astros gave up on him the first time around. If you don't remember the history of John Singleton, this was the first guy who got a long-term deal before even debuting in the majors. That was the caliber of prospect he was. And, he got $10 million over 5 years, something like that. And at the time, people were like, oh, he's crazy. He's giving up so much money. Well, this is, why it might be worth the risk to go ahead and lock up life-sustaining money there when you can, because you never know how it's going to play out. And it hasn't played out well for him, obviously. He is much older now, 31 years old. But both of his home runs were hit 108 miles per hour. He's an incredibly disciplined hitter. He went hitless in the next two games. The 2-homer game was Friday. He went hitless both Saturday and Sunday. But he's going to get an extended look here with Jose Abreu on the IL, and just keep an eye on it, because I do think maybe he didn't get a fair shake in his younger years, despite that early financial commitment from the Astros.
Again, that is John Singleton. AL only leagues for now. If you're playing 15-team mixed roto leagues, deep corner infield spots, you're hurting for power. It's a great lineup, obviously. I don't know that he's going to play every day, but kind of interesting right now is John Singleton. Let's run through some starter sit questions for starting pitchers. Obviously, this is a big time of year. People are trying to protect their ratios. They might be entering some prolonged head-to-head playoffs, so they've got to get the right decisions. Let's talk about Jesus Luzardo, who was hit hard by the Yankees on Friday. He allowed 7 runs over 3 1/3 innings, 8 hard hits allowed in this game. It's been an up and down season for Luzardo. His last 3 starts, he has an ERA over 10. His previous 7 starts before that, he had a 1.48 ERA. His 5 starts before that, a 6.15 ERA. So it's a roller coaster ride for Luzardo. Chris, do we start or sit Luzardo against the Astros this week? They are 5th in WOBA against left-handed pitching.
I think it's okay to sit him. I'm probably going to start him where I have him, but it's not just the up and down nature of his season. It's also the fact that he's already passed his career high in innings. So we're in uncharted territory here with Jesus Luzardo. We know he's very, very good, and the velocity hasn't really been down lately as the innings have piled up, but it's just, does he become a little less sharp because he has to reach back a little more? I think that's a reasonable explanation, I guess, or hypothesis for why he's struggled. It's also just he had 3 bad starts, could just be it. So yeah. I don't want to bury him, but there's definitely more risk right now with Jesus Luzardo moving forward than there has been all season.
Let's talk about Chris Sale, who had a solid return against the Tigers on Friday, 4 2/3, 1 hit allowed, 2 runs, 7 strikeouts with 12 swinging strikes, got up to 58 pitches in that one. He's at the Nationals this week. They're 10th in WOBA against lefties. So actually have been pretty good there. Scott, are we starting Chris Sale this week? Maybe he gets up to 70, 75 pitches.
Yeah, I feel good about starting him. I'm not saying you have to start him if you're stacked, but I'll probably start him everywhere I have him, which is quite a few leagues. He looked really good against the Tigers.
All right. Charlie Morton did pick up the win on Friday, but he walked 7 in this start. He did go 5 shutout innings, 3 hits, those 7 walks, 4 strikeouts with 11 swinging strikes. And over his last 5 starts, Morton has a 5.84 ERA, a 191 whip, more walks than strikeouts during that time. Chris, are we starting Charlie Morton against the Yankees this week, who have struggled?
Here's the question. How many wins does he have in that time?
Probably a lot.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. He might have won 3 of those 5 starts with how the Braves are playing right now. Actually, they've kind of been scuffling a little bit overall just because I think they have the worst starting pitcher ERA in baseball since the All-Star break or something. I would be inclined to start him, but I would certainly have him below Chris Sale and Jesus Luzardo.
So over his last 5 starts, he only has 1 win, and that came.
The Braves have actually kind of been like a 500-ish team since the All-Star break, haven't they?
A little better than 500, I think, but they certainly they still have the best record in baseball, right? But they haven't played like that since the All-Star break. That's fair to say.
Let's talk about Lance Lynn, who has pitched well with the Dodgers. He faced the Rockies on Friday, 5 innings, 1 unearned run with 9 strikeouts, 18 swinging strikes on 94 pitches. Obviously, a great matchup here. facing the Rockies outside of Coors Field. The velocity was up in this start. Looks like he's kind of changed up the pitch mix a little bit, pitching for the Dodgers so far. Scott, are you starting Lance Lynn against the Brewers this week?
Look, I mean, 3 for 3 in terms of delivering good starts since the trade to the Dodgers. Maybe that change of scenery is all he needed. It's baffling when it happens, but it happens often enough, particularly for a pitcher who had reasons to be encouraged even when he was pitching terribly. That, this may be one of those cases. Brewers obviously make for a good matchup. I would lean towards starting Lynn.
All right, let's slide over to John Gray, who got back on track with a great start at the Giants, 7 shutout innings with 7 strikeouts. In that one, still did give up 8 hard hits in this game, 92.9 average exit velocity. He's kind of been up and down this year too, Chris. John Gray facing the Angels this week. They're 6th in WOBA against right-handed pitching. Are you start or sit John Gray?
I mean, I guess it's relative to the guys we've talked about, right? And I think in that context, he'd probably only be ahead of Charlie Morton for me this week among the guys we talked about. So would lean sit.
Okay. Let's talk about Mitch Keller. We know he's struggled over the past couple of months. He did turn in his first quality start since July 8th. He was facing the Reds on Sunday. 6 innings, 2 runs allowed. Only one of them was earned. He did have 7 strikeouts and 12 swinging strikes. He is facing the Twins this week. The thing about the Twins, though, they're actually 9th in WOBA against righties. So when they make contact, it seems like they do some damage. But they also have the highest strikeout rate in baseball. Scott, starter sit Mitch Keller against the Twins.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be afraid to start him. I'll put it that way. I'm not going to say he's must start at, one good start after a stretch of 4 miserable ones. But this is a matchup that can yield a high outcome. And, Keller did turn things around. It seemed like he went really heavy on sinker and fastball in this start against Cincinnati. I don't know if he was just kind of trying to recalibrate, just really simplify things, because he has that wide variety of pitches. I feel like it's easy for pitchers to sometimes get lost in that. And
he's the new Yu Darvish.
Yeah. And Joe Musgrove has had dramatic ups and downs because of that too, I feel like. I mean, he could have a big strikeout performance against the Twins. And so if you don't like your other pitching options, I wouldn't be afraid to start Keller.
Let's talk about Yuri Perez, who has struggled in his 2 starts back with the Marlins. He's given up 4 earned runs in each of them. And he's at the Dodgers this week, who are 3rd in WOBA against righties. Chris, starter sit Yuri Perez.
I think I would lean sit at this point. I know the problem is he's so talented that if he went out and gave us 6 shutout with 8 strikeouts, I wouldn't be surprised. But they are being careful with him. They're not pitching him deep into games. He hasn't been quite as sharp since coming up. There's been some changes in his pitch mix as well. He's throwing his fastball and slider way more overall. He's kind of turned into just a 2-pitch pitcher in the 2 starts since coming back. I don't know if he hasn't had the feel for the curveball and changeup, but I would lean towards sitting.
I think so too. It's more to do with the matchup than anything.
Yes.
That's the toughest matchup we brought up so far, the Dodgers here against Yuri Perez. Dylan Cease, last one up. He had one of his better starts on Sunday, 7 innings, 2 runs with 7 strikeouts against the Brewers. The problem this week, he is in Coors Field. Scott, your thoughts on Dylan Cease?
I think he was he another one who took something off his slider? I think he just threw his slider a bunch more in this start. He threw it like more than 50% of the time. If I'm remembering correctly. Coors Field is a scary place where I think you generally choose to sit most any pitcher. But I'm not going to call Cease an automatic start either. I mean, the thing to remember with this is pitchers as a whole kind of suck. So I don't know that many people who have Dylan Cease can afford to sit him. But if you can afford to, it's not a bad idea to sit him for this one.
Would you, let's say, Scott, play, I don't know, one of your sleeper 2-start pitchers against instead of a Dylan Cease?
Let's see. So Gavin Williams is just a 1-start pitcher. He's my top sleeper pitcher for this week. I would start him over John Gray, but he's, only available in a quarter of leagues. Nick Pivetta is my number 2 sleeper pitcher. He's the highest ranked 2-start guy.
That's an interesting one. He is starting against Washington, at least. I don't know about the Yankee start, but they did confirm he's making his next start.
And those are 2 good matchups. And even if he follows an opener in that Yankees start,
could still get a win.
I mean, you're potentially talking 15 strikeout week for Nick Pivetta. So it's close between him and Cease. If you can afford to fit Pivetta on your roster, I'd probably lean him over Cease. Next on the list is a 2-start Miles Michaelis.
I'd go with him over Cease.
You would? Okay.
Yeah.
Good matchups also.
Great matchups, yeah.
That's probably it. My next highest 2-start sleeper is Kyle Hendricks, who also has good matchups, but I'd rather start Cease.
No love for Graham Ashcraft, huh, Scott?
He's right behind Hendricks, but no, I'd rather start Cease.
All right, let's take our final break. When we return, we'll hit the news from the weekend. Got some other leftovers. We'll do all of that right after this.
Driving into the stadium, seeing everybody tailgating, I get that ready-to-go feeling.
To walk through the fan section over there and see that many people excited about football, so I'm really looking forward to it.
You get away from football for a little bit and then you start missing it. You get that itch again.
For me, that first catch is everything. Once I get one catch, I'm in the zone.
Getting back to football.
It's been too long.
We can't wait.
Can't wait.
We can't wait. We can't wait.
Welcome back. Let's talk news and notes from the weekend. This actually came out right as we went live, and this was a tweet from Jeff Passan, who said Tampa Bay shortstop Wander Franco did not travel on the team plane to San Francisco, where the Rays will start a series with the Giants on Monday. Sources tell ESPN. The Rays earlier said MLB is doing, quote, due diligence concerning social media posts from earlier on Sunday about Wander Franco. MLB is looking into the social media posts and has yet to verify the information. This early in the process, without confirmed facts, Franco could be placed on the restricted list or administrative leave. The Rays, when asked about Franco not being on the plane, declined comment. And there are some pretty serious accusations out there. We'll see what happens. But I guess that means we sit Wander Franco for now, right?
Yeah, you have to, yeah.
Yep. All right. Shohei Ohtani will not make his next scheduled pitching start on Wednesday against the Rangers as he's dealing with fatigue. Make sure to get him in your lineup as a hitter instead of a pitcher. Mike Trout began hitting against a pitching machine on Friday, assuming there are no setbacks. Trout should be back sometime in August. Shane McClanahan, breaks my heart to say, season is officially done as he was transferred to the 60-day IL. I didn't miss something, right? Like we didn't get an official diagnosis or any kind of like surgery announcement or anything like that, right?
I haven't seen anything now.
Backdoor way to rule him out for the season. Just sneakily slide him to the 60-day IL.
It's one of those things where, let's say he needs Tommy John surgery, or they think that there's a chance he needs Tommy John surgery. If he has that now versus in March, it doesn't really change the timetable, right? Like he's going to miss all of next season and, potentially the start of the following season anyway. So they probably just, whatever it is, give him a couple of months to rest and then start ramping back up in the offseason and see what happens. That would be my guess.
If I was a fan of the Rays, I'd much rather him have that surgery in October than March. I mean, that's 6 months of recovery time.
Yeah.
Just dead time. I mean, you might as well use it.
Yeah,
I'd be disappointed if
he probably wouldn't be back at the end of next season anyway. That's the thought process, that you're looking at the start of 2025 if that happens either way.
Right. Mm-hmm. But it becomes the difference of for sure 2025
right, yeah.
versus maybe not until midway through 2025. Yeah.
Francisco Lindor was dealing with right side soreness, but was back in the lineup for game 2 of their doubleheader on Saturday. He also played on Sunday, so should be confident putting Lindor in your lineups this week. Tyler Glasnow was targeting a return this weekend, but instead will make his next start Monday at the Giants. That sounds like he'll be lined up for 2 starts. Scott, are we starting Tyler Glasnow?
Almost certainly. There's, some risk that he doesn't make it through that first start. And then obviously he doesn't give you 2 starts, but he's so good. Got to take the chance.
Mm-hmm.
Carlos Rodon will face hitters during a simulated game later this week. If all goes according to plan, he should return when first eligible on August 22nd. The Astros, we mentioned earlier, will skip Hunter Brown's next turn in the rotation. Make sure to get him out of your lineups this week. Kyle Schwarber is dealing with a left foot contusion and will be reevaluated Saturday. I clearly wrote these notes in on Saturday morning, so I didn't update that one. Did Kyle Schwarber play on Sunday? I feel like he did. I feel like he did. Could be making that up though. Kyle Schwarber. Nope, I don't have it.
He was not in the lineup. Actually, nope, he was. Sorry, I said that very confidently, and I was looking at the Twins lineup.
All right, so
you know why? Baseball Savant, for some reason, has the Twins as the red team and the Phillies as the blue team. That doesn't make any sense.
Makes no sense. All right, so I think we're good to get Kyle Schwarber back in our lineups. Jonathan India will receive a second opinion on his left foot and has been shut down from running for at least 2 weeks. Jordan Romano is on track to return to the Blue Jays on Tuesday. Marcus Stroman threw a 50-pitch bullpen session and remains on track to return when eligible on Wednesday. Chris, my guess is we should not start Marcus Stroman, right? He was struggling quite a bit.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so, no, given how bad he'd been the previous month, really.
Michael Wacha is expected to return Tuesday against the Orioles. The Padres play 7 games this week, so that sounds like Michael Wacha will be a 2-star pitcher, but it's right off the IL. Scott, what do we do with Michael Wacha?
I probably need to get him in my 2-star pitcher rankings, if that is the case. I prefer to sit him, but there are worse gambles to take than a 2-star Michael Wacha fresh off the IL.
Okay. Christian Encarnacion Strand was removed Friday after being hit by a pitch on his hand. X-rays came back negative, and he was back in the lineup Sunday. So should be good to get him in your lineups this week. Alek Manoah was optioned to AAA on Friday. As we mentioned last week, he could and should be dropped in all of your leagues. CJ Abrams was removed Sunday with back spasms. The Nationals are off on Monday, so we won't really find out until Tuesday, the latest on CJ Abrams. Anthony Rizzo said Friday that he is aiming to ramp up baseball activities within the next week. He was placed on the IL August 3rd with post-concussion syndrome. Nick Lodolo began a rehab assignment in the Arizona Complex League on Friday. Tanner Houck will need one more rehab start before rejoining the Red Sox rotation. And Mason Miller threw another live BP on Saturday. It sounds like in order of when they'll be back, it would be Houck, Lodolo, Mason Miller. Chris, how would you rank stashing them? Who would you want to have most on your team? Lodolo, Houck, and Mason Miller.
I would be pretty surprised if Mason Miller made much of an impact this season. So I would probably go Lodolo, Houck, Miller.
All right. Players who went to the IL this weekend: JP Crawford on the concussion IL. Nestor Cortez, this is a rough one. He came back, made one start, looked good in that start, and out of nowhere, back on the IL with a left rotator cuff strain, shut down from throwing for a month. Jose Abreu to the IL with lower back inflammation, and Dylan Carlson with a left oblique strain, which might get more playing time for your boy Alec Burleson, Scott. So
yeah, let's do it.
They have 7 games this week, too. I was looking at Burleson in some of my deeper leagues on Sunday night. I didn't get him, but I think in a deeper league, he's an interesting play this week. Let's talk some leftovers, some pitching performances. Part 1, Spencer Strider, a bounce-back start at the Mets this weekend. 7 shutout with 6 strikeouts and 18 swinging strikes. Sandy Alcantara has 2 complete games in his last 4 outings. He was facing the Yankees on Saturday. He threw a 5-hitter with 10 strikeouts, 19 swinging strikes in that one. Pablo Lopez has allowed a total of 5 earned runs over his last 5 starts. He's been pitching very well. And Brandon Woodruff looks solid in his second start back from injury at the White Sox this weekend. 6 1/3 innings, 2 runs, 5 strikeouts. Chris, 4 pretty big names here: Woodruff, Lopez, Alcantara, Strider. Any thoughts?
No, I mean, I know there was a little bit of panic about Spencer Strider, going through a stretch where he was giving up a lot of home runs and the ERA was getting kind of inflated. I mean, if he's not the best pitcher in baseball, he's the second best. I have had no concerns about him. You take the high ERA, I guess, and live with it.
He is an uncharted territory with the innings now, just
sure,
like Jesus Luzardo is. So I'm not suggesting anyone think about sitting Strider. I'm not necessarily suggesting you think about trading Slider unless you're somebody knocks you out of your chair, but that it does introduce an element of uncertainties. Just like how is he going to acclimate to this bigger workload?
A fun Freudian slip there. You called him Spencer Slider.
Maybe I did it on purpose.
And then, I mean, you have Sandy Alcantara, who he's been much, much better over the past month or so. I don't really have a good explanation. This is what I've said every time I've talked about Sandy Alcantara this season is I haven't really had a good explanation for when he's struggled. Don't really have a good explanation for what's happening now. This was an especially impressive start because I'm not a complain about the umpires guy, but we got a classic Angel Hernandez performance behind the plate on Saturday, and he still had a complete game. So that was impressive.
I will point out for Sandy, he struggled with the changeup so far this year. 7 of his 19 swinging strikes in the start were on that changeup. So hopefully good signs to come for Sandy Alcantara.
You mentioned two complete games in his last 4. 3 of 4, 8+, 1-.
I think he's gone at least 6 and 8 straight starts or something too.
Yeah. He's looking back on track. Thank goodness.
Pitching leftovers part 2. Zack Gelof turned in his first scoreless outing since May 30th. He was facing the Padres, 6 shutout innings with 8 strikeouts for him. George Kirby with a tough luck, no decision. He went 9 shutout innings. It was not a complete game because the game went into extra innings, but he did have 7 strikeouts with 15 swinging strikes. His velocity has been up recently. He's been pitching really well, George Kirby. So has Freddie Peralta. In the second half, 6 starts. He has a 2.5 ERA, a .89 whip with 50 strikeouts over 36 innings. Scott, any thoughts on Freddie Peralta, George Kirby, Zack Gelof?
Well, like I said after Freddie Peralta's last start, I wish I could tell you with confidence that he's back on track and you can just trust him in your lineup rest of season. That's certainly how it feels now, but there's a reason he has an ERA over 4 still. And this year, pitchers can go from very good to very bad at the drop of a dime. So I am cautiously optimistic about Peralta, mostly just based on his history. And I'll leave it at that.
All right. And pitching leftovers part 3, Dane Dunning, who we mentioned earlier, had the 12 strikeouts at the Giants. On the other side of that game, Logan Webb, 8 2/3 innings, 1 run, 6 strikeouts. And Julio Urias put together a vintage performance against the Rockies on Sunday. 7 innings, 3 runs, 12 strikeouts with 22 swinging strikes. A great start here for Urias. Chris, any thoughts on Logan Webb or Urias? We already talked about Dunning.
Don't really have anything to add here. Logan Webb's having a really, really nice season. He's been kind of under-heralded for a while, but he's a really good pitcher.
I know we don't talk about betting here. A lot of people probably don't care about it, but I've got to point out National League Cy Young odds. Spencer Strider has the 5th best odds. There are 4 players ahead of him right now. Zack Gelof, Logan Webb, Blake Snell, Justin Steele. That seems kind of weird, no?
Yeah, I mean,
players again?
Zack Gelof, Logan Webb, Blake Snell, Justin Steele. They all are more likely, according to the betting market, to win the National League Cy Young over Spencer Strider.
I feel like putting some money on Spencer Strider and the highest strikeout rate of all time makes a lot of sense there.
Yeah, it's that's interesting. Let's talk hitting leftovers. Trey Turner. Feel free to I got a bunch of names here. Wherever you want to jump in, just feel free. Trey Turner, back-to-back 3-hit games Friday and Saturday. 13 games in the second half. He's batting .333 with 2 homers, 1 steal, and a .939 OPS. Nico Horner, 2 for 4 with a sock and a shoe on Friday. He added another 2-hit game on Saturday. He's been awesome lately. Salvador Perez had a breakout game on Friday. He went 4 for 4 with his 18th home run. Needed that. He's been struggling for quite some time. Xander Bogaerts has had a down year. Remember that, what was it, first 2 weeks? We were like all taking L's on Xander Bogaerts. And it's like, he had a huge game on Friday. 4 for 4, a home run and a stolen base, 12th homer, 13th steal. He has 40 RBI this year. 40. Xander Bogaerts.
That team's been so weird.
What is going on? Like, we recently talked about how Luis Arraez, as great as he is, hitting .350, I think he he had like 55 RBI or something like that. Xander Bogaerts has 40 RBI. Yeah. How is that even possible? Matt Olson had a double dong on Saturday. The Braves put up 21 runs on the Mets. And then Olson also went yard again on Sunday, increases his league lead to 43 home runs. Ozzy Albies, I mentioned it, 2 socks, 2 shoes. Go ahead.
Let me mention 8 of those 21 runs came off a position player, which it's just rude, you know?
I will also point out, Matt Olson, we've seen some fluctuations in his strikeout rate over the last couple of seasons. I think 2021, did it go really low? Am I remembering correctly? Yep. Either way, his last, I think it's 54 games I saw since he got moved out of the number 2 spot. His strikeout rate's down to like 17%. So, that's worth noting.
Like it's 2021 again, baby.
The Sunday Night Baseball broadcast pointed out differences in Matt Olson's batting stance this year and something that he's changed in the offseason. If you remember in years past, Matt Olson has like held his arms all the way out, and it looked actually kind of awkward while he was standing there waiting to hit. And it's not as pronounced anymore. His arms are a little bit closer to his body, and it seems to have worked.
I did notice that, yeah.
Justin Turner returned on Saturday. He's been dealing with a heel contusion. Doesn't matter. I thought, maybe this will affect his production. Nope. Hit home runs on back-to-back days. Tommy Edman went 2 for 3 with a double dong. I didn't write down which day, but obviously it's a big game for him. He's been playing very well since returning from the IL. 325 batting average, 3 home runs, and 1 steal for Tommy Edman. Ryan Reynolds went 2 for 5 with a double dong on Sunday. He's now up to 17 home runs. It was a huge weekend for Andres Jimenez. He had 9 hits, including 2 home runs on Sunday. He is up to 11 homers and 20 steals on the year. Shohei Ohtani did more MVP things on Sunday, 1 for 3 with a sock and a shoe, his 41st home run and 17th steal. And Trevor Story is starting to get going. He went 2 for 4 with a stolen base on Friday. He went 4 for 4 with 2 steals on Sunday. And I don't know if you guys realize, but Trevor Story became available in NFBC leagues on Sunday night. He went for $149 and $167 of fab, respectively, out of $1,000 in the 2 leagues that I play in. That's a huge amount, but I mean, Trevor Story in a league that deep, he could be a league winner.
I'm going to guess I did not win him in my leagues then. I haven't checked. I do not have that much money to spend. 68 in this league, Frank. Not to me. And in this other league, 164. Yeah.
I think I had a $6 bid and a $34 bid. I do not have much fab left at all. Let's wrap up with some bullpen updates from the weekend for Tampa Bay on Friday. Pete Fairbanks entered in the 9th inning with a 3-run lead. He allowed 3 runs, only recorded 2 outs. He was relieved by Robert Stevenson, who wound up with the win. For the Rangers on Friday, Aroldis Chapman once again pitched the 8th. Will Smith got the 9th inning, gave up a run, but did pick up his 22nd save. I believe Will Smith got the loss on Sunday, so I still think he'll be the guy, but worth monitoring. For the Blue Jays on Saturday, Jordan Hicks entered in the 9th with the game tied. He gave up a run and took his 7th loss. So Jordan Romano sounds like should be back this week. Does that mean we're good to drop Jordan Hicks, drop Eric Swanson? Your thoughts?
I mean, I would think so. If you can afford to, it's not a bad idea to keep them stashed just to make sure Romano's really ready to go because there was a flare up before. But roster limitations are a thing.
For the Tigers on Saturday, they continued to bypass Alex Lang. It was Jason Foley who retired the final 5 outs for his 5th save. Chris, is there anybody in the Tigers bullpen? I know Foley has gotten a save recently. Jose Cisnero, Bo Brisky. We're talking deep leagues here, but anyone in the Tigers bullpen? You are muted, sir.
I just think the problem is there's no one guy. I'm not sure any of them are all that good, and it's a bad team. So, I don't know, maybe Jason Foley, but I don't buy the ERA is really good, but I don't quite buy it. So I would probably just skip this one.
For the Guardians on Saturday, Emmanuel Clase entered the 9th with a 2-run lead. He gave up 3 runs and took his league-leading 9th blown save of the season. He also has 7 losses. It's been a weird year for Emmanuel Clase. Yep. For the Cardinals on Saturday, Giovanni Gallegos entered in the 8th with a 3-run lead. He gave up a run on 3 hits. He was relieved by Jojo Romero, who would eventually escape with his 2nd save. He's 4% rostered. Scott, do you have a feel for the Cardinals bullpen right now? It sounds like Ryan Helsley could be back soon.
Yeah, it does. I mean, if you're going to roster any Cardinals reliever, I think it should be Helsley. So since they traded away Hicks, Romero got the first save, Gallegos got the second, Romero the third, which seems pretty committee-like to me. And it's, probably short-lived to begin with.
All right, let's talk about the Mariners. For Andres Munoz came in on Saturday in the 10th inning with the Manfred man on second base. He gave up a hit, took his 5th loss, and I believe he also gave up a game-tying run on Sunday as well. So I'm not actually worried, but
yeah, that was him. Yeah,
let's see where it goes. For the A's on Sunday, Trevor May entered in the 9th inning with a 5-run lead. He gave up 5 runs. 3 of those were earned. It was not the greatest day for Trevor May.
He's had some weird outings. He had that one last week where I think he got 5 outs, didn't give up a hit or a walk, and blew a save. It's just been a weird stuff from Trevor May. Fittingly, I feel like.
That sounds like the Trevor May experience. For the Yankees on Sunday, as we alluded to earlier, Clay Holmes entered in the 9th inning with a 4-run lead, and he imploded. He gave up 5 runs, 4 of those earned on a walk, an error, and 3 hits. He took his 3rd loss. For the Angels on Sunday, Carlos Estevez picked up his 25th save. He has been struggling recently, so it was nice to see him get back on track. For the Diamondbacks, Paul Sewald picked up his first 2 saves with the team this weekend. And for the Mets on Sunday Night Baseball, Brooks Raley pitched in the 8th inning with a 3-run lead. Adam Ottavino would eventually get the save. Scott, do you think Adam Ottavino is the lead guy right now for the Mets?
I mean, in leagues where saves are scarce, I'd still be a little reluctant to drop Raley. But if I had to guess who gets the majority of saves for the Mets going forward, I would guess Adam Ottavino, just given the usage of the two recently. Now, how many saves are they going to get, and how much will they stick with any one guy? Those are fair questions. I'm not sure it's a particularly appetizing bullpen situation right now.
All right, to stream or not to stream, we will start with Monday, and it's not a great day. Not a great day.
Pretty bad group of pitchers here.
I mean, Thursday is going to be bad too, I would guess, because it's just both of those schedules are so light this week, Monday and Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, if you're forcing me to start somebody from Monday, I am probably going to start JP Sears at St. Louis. If you're forcing me to start somebody who's among the available pitchers here, I should say.
Right.
Is Michaelis too widely rostered?
I think he's up to 76%.
Okay, yeah.
I usually try to keep it 75 or lower.
I use an 80% cutoff for sleeper pitchers.
Yeah, if we use
Frank's
that one,
more.
then Miles Michaelis.
Yes, Michaelis would be the one. I agree.
No, I may be starting Chris Flexen in a points league, but that is not an endorsement of Chris Flexen starting in your fantasy league.
No, don't do it. Michaelis, I agree. JP Sears, I don't know how you could be desperate on the first day of the week, but man, if you want the volume, I guess I'll point out Brady Singer up against the Mariners. On Tuesday, Nick Pivetta at the Nationals. That's pretty good.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I think Kyle Hendricks against the White Sox is pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I think both sides of the Logan Allen, Graham Ashcraft matchup could be good.
Mm-hmm.
I think I like Ashcraft more, but I agree. And Emerson Hancock at the Royals.
Yeah, I would prefer him to Logan Allen.
Okay. Well, Tuesday's a pretty good day. Yeah, like 4 or 5 names there.
Don't bother with Monday. Just wait until Tuesday.
All right, we're going to wrap there. For Scott and Chris, I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify, and we will be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.